Reading 13 from the Psychological Commentaries on the Teaching of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky by Dr. Maurice Nicoll. Birdlip, April 1st, 1944. The Enneagram 9. Further notes on the idea of recurrence. It seems that many people have great difficulty in understanding what the shock at point 6 is, and although it has been explained in every paper that this shock is of different kinds, and that in a general sense, the ideas of the work and the practice of it give this shock, questions are still asked about what it is. For instance, in the discussion last week, it was asked, can one connect this shock of time at point 6 in the same way as one connects the shock of realizing one's mechanicalness? The idea that we recur is a shock when it is emotionally perceived. It changes our relationship to the present and to the past. It makes us see our lives in a new way. Now, if you can see your life in a new way, this is a shock. What is it a shock against? It is a shock against the way that you were taking life before. If you take your life in the same way always, you become fixed. To loosen you, a shock is necessary. You know how difficult it is to change people's ideas, and that it is a sign of intelligence to be able to grasp new ideas. This work is to make us think. All the ideas of this work can act as shocks if we think about them for ourselves. The ideas will lift us up to a different level. They will shake us out of the dullness and stupidity of small eyes that direct our lives all the time. You understand that a vision can be thought of as a shock. A man has new vision. He sees light where he did not see it before. He sees everything in a new perspective. Through his vision, he has a shock. It is a shock to the old way of seeing things. He is shaken out of himself, and if you are shaken out of yourself, you are being given shock. A shock has to awaken us from the deep sleep in which we live our lives. We go to sleep instantly. We get up and sleep more deeply than in bed. Not only do the ideas of the work give us a shock when they are understood and assimilated into the mind, but they can transform us. The shock of being awakened is accompanied by the transformation of oneself. The shock of spring on a seed awakens it to a new life, which at the same time transforms it. The seed is shaken out of itself. Have you ever been shaken out of yourself, off the basis on which you rest? If so, you understand what a shock is. But a shock is not necessarily a sudden thing. It may operate over a long, long period, like a ferment which slowly changes the grape into wine. The answer, then, to the question as to whether the idea of time can be connected with the shock at point 6 is yes. It was expressly said so in the paper, but it will only be a shock if one tries to understand what it means, and often thinks about recurrence and how one will always turn in the wheel of one's own life unless one changes oneself. What then do we have to do to change ourselves? This work is teaching us what we have to do every day and every minute. In regard to the questions about the different kinds of memory, each center and part of a center has its own memory. Memory is not one and the same thing. What was said was that memory is our relationship to the fourth dimension. It is our relationship to our time. We can move in memory into the past without moving from our seats. Certainly, this relationship to the past is very faulty. Underlying our personal memory, there is a deeper memory to which we very rarely have access, if at all. In this deeper memory, everything is present, everything we said or did or saw or experienced. This is the book of our life, which is opened at death. We have memory in essence. Personality is destroyed at death, but essence returns. We have, therefore, a chance of remembering when we recur, only if essence records anything. Whatever we do genuinely touches essence, and essence will remember it on its return. This is one reason why genius sometimes shows itself very early. In recurrence, everything comes earlier. That is, anything in any way genuinely done. Some musicians and other men of genius have begun to remember very early. Real memory is not connected up in the same way as personal memory. For example, all moments of genuine understanding in the work will be connected together. They will not lie mixed up with other memories in sequence or mixed up with dates. Memories of the same emotional quality tend to connect themselves. This memory of past time, of day by day, is different from emotional memory. In other words, our relationship to the fourth dimension is very different. A person may have a very poor time sequence memory and have a good emotional memory, and vice versa. The question has been asked, how can we be reborn in the same part of time as our parents will not be there? There is a misconception here. Our parents are in our time. Everything is there in time, and everything is recurring in time. The difficulty is to conceive with our sense-based minds what higher dimensions are like. In fact, it is impossible. We can only think of time as a line. But there are really 3 dimensions of time, so that the line becomes a plane, and the plane becomes a solid. In this solid of time, everything exists, and everything is turning on wheels, big and small. At the same time, there is some general change taking place in the whole time solid. To put it in our ordinary language, some things are ascending, some things are descending, and some things are remaining stationary. In taking the idea of recurrence, we have to pick it out. We might pick out one wheel from a machine for our understanding, and we must conceive in some way that this wheel is made of some elastic substance that is capable of stretching a little or of being compressed. With regard to the question as to whether we can choose different parents, naturally we cannot if we are under the laws of recurrence. We are born into the same part of time as before, and our parents are there. It is only when we come to speak of reincarnation that this question can arise. Reincarnation is quite different from recurrence. In recurrence, one is born into the same part of time through the same parents. In reincarnation, one is not born into the same part of time. But reincarnation is out of the question for us. A very high development is necessary. A man must have reached the end of his life, and he must be joined together in a certain way internally by fusion before he can pass into another part of time. If we come under the influences of the idea of recurrence, the whole of our conception of the past changes. It is said that a great struggle is going to take place in the world between the religious people who believe in an afterlife and scientists who believe only in this life. You will see how the idea of recurrence satisfies both these sides. When you see that your past lies in front of you, then your thoughts about your past become useful